Hey, Mullet Rockers, this is the Nat Man, Nat Hall from Mullet Metal Mayhem. I've got with me right now the 5-star general of the KISS Army. Yes, he's a little bit unshaven at the moment, but by golly, he would be wearing those 5 stars in the KISS Army for sure. This is Big Daddy. This is Greg Crane. Greg, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing quite well, thanks, Nat. Good to be here with you. We visit pretty regularly here on the YouTube thing and on the podcast and the webcast and whatever the kids are casting with these days. All about hard rock, metal music, bands we like, bands we love, songs we like, songs that get stuck in our head, songs that just pop back into our head after years and years. The bands, the tours, the albums, the concerts, this and that. We just have a good time talking about music and bands and performers that we love.
You're right. You know, back in our day, back when we were little youngsters, of course, you know, before the net, you know, when we would talk about casting, it was mostly about, do you got your good casting method down for fly fishing? Can you get that bobber out in the water far enough to where we got some fish? Fish on! You know, something like that, right?
Exactly. But now with technology being what it is, it's a whole new ball game, and we're able to bring our brand of fun and frivolity to all sorts of people all across the world. So we're looking forward to that and sharing some good times with everybody and good times and good music with people.
And you're right about that. Hey, that's what it's all about on Mullet Metal Mayhem. The YouTube channel. We are hitting the ones and ones, hopefully the tens and tens of you here in the future. It's all about the fun, the frivolity. Hey, it's all about the music. Mullet Metal Mayhem. If it's rocking, then we are going to be throwing it down. I am the Nat Man. I have my own radio show called Mullet Metal Mayhem. I throw that down nearly every week, once a week on a Friday night, just to make sure that you get a little bit turned. Yeah, get prepared for that weekend. A little mulletude right there for you. The mulleteers are out there live, loud, and proud. And I got to tell you, it's fun because Greg Crane, I'm telling you what, if I am a decent fellow and I know a little bit, I've got a master's degree level of education within the hair metal and hard rock genre. We are talking to the PhD himself, Dr. Crane, when it comes to metal and hard rock. Am I right? Am I wrong? What am I thinking here?
Well, that's pretty high praise, pretty high compliment, Nat. Thank you. Maybe I'm like those Hollywood people who don't go to school, but they get the honorary PhD. Maybe I'm like that. I don't know. I know a little bit. You know a little bit. Between us, we know quite a bit. So and of course, we're always researching and learning and just having a fun time with the music.
Hey, that's what it's about. It's all about the fun. Whether you're 50 something. You know, hey, there's a rapper out there called 50 Cent. I'm 50 year, and then some. I might be a little bit more than a 50 cent piece these days in my age, and Meister Crane might be the same. But whether you are a person of our age or younger or older, my gosh, older as well, it doesn't matter. If you're a rocker, we got something for you right here in Mullet Metal Mayhem. And with Big Daddy Crane and myself, we really do like to make sure that it's a fun time. Nothing serious, no butthurt stuff going on, no political stuff going on. If you like rock, if you just like to let your head be a banging, if you like that nitty-gritty, grimy, slimy, just crawled out of the dumpster rock and roll, we got some of that for you.
This is true. Yeah, there's all kinds of that other stuff, and we all have our different views on practically everything under the sun. But we stick to the music here because that's what it's all about. It's a place to unwind and laugh and reminisce, and who knows, maybe even think a little bit. So we're just having fun with music, and that's about the extent of this. None of the other stuff. There's all kinds of places for the other stuff. So we're just having fun.
That's right. That's right. So, Greg, he's the one that raises the bar in that IQ section. I've got the IQ of my foot size. Greg kind of raises that bar just a hair bit.
I'm pushing room temperature. So yeah, on the IQ. So there we go.
Already root. Intelligent quotient right there for you, kids. So, not only is Mullet Metal Mayhem all about the rock and the roll and the lifestyle of it all, we also want to shout out to a great podcast that Greg and myself are a part of. It would be the Walkman Whisperers. And Greg, would you give just a bit of a quick narrative about what the Walkman Whisperers WW is all about?
Sure. The Walkman Whisperers podcast you can find where better podcasts are sold all across on all sorts of places there, wherever you pick up your better quality podcast. The Walkman Whisperers, there are four of us. That handsome fellow that I'm talking to right there himself. There's myself. There's another young gentleman we went to college with, Chad Bartling, and a very intelligent, funny young lady by the name of April McDonald. We went to college with her. She's got a lot of great perspective and tries, I'm going to emphasize, to keep us in line. No, it's not working. It's not working.
Nope.
But she keeps trying, and we're glad that she's on board, and the four of us have too much fun. But we hope you join us for the Walkman Whispers. We're talking, we're kids. We were all born very, very late 60s, tail end of the 60s, early part of the 70s. So we were growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s. We're talking a lot of 80s pop culture. We go back into the 70s, a fair amount of, TV, music, movies, into the 90s when we were kind of starting to figure some things out. We'll talk about that. We try to focus on pop culture, but we kick around all kinds of ideas. There's all kinds of music, movies, TV, food, fashion, fun, and frivolity. So we hope you join us for the Walkman Whispers, where finer podcasts are available.
Oh my gosh, you hit the 4 F's. Food, fashion, fun, and frivolity. Yes, you nailed it, Meister Crane. Anyways, yeah, great stuff there. And like you said, awesome April. She is a school marm, rapping our knuckles from time to time, making sure that we are staying right abreast of the topics. We got to keep it good.
She reels us in, but you know what? It kind of works both ways. Sometimes we kind of push her outside of her comfort zone. So it works great for everybody. That's
right. She's married to a Canadian dude, so we're okay because he's going, it's alrighty. Let's just, have a little Molson beer and some back bacon. We'll be just fine, eh?
Yeah, and he's an ex-hockey player, so if things get too far out of hand, he'll just whack us with a stick and knock a few teeth out, and we'll go on.
That's right. No icing calls in this podcast, I got to tell you. Anyways, lots of fun. Oh, yes. Mullet Metal Mayhem is all about the rock and roll, and Walkman Whisper is all about the lifestyle of those kiddos and cadets from the 80s. Anyways, hey, Greg, let's get back into a little Mullet Metal Mayhem right now.
Yeah.
When it comes down to music, I do have a fun show, and I go a little bit over the top. I go with the over the top and then some cheesy dad humor. Of course, my daughter and son would absolutely agree, and they would put their hand on a stack of Bibles and absolutely state, yes, that is the fact. But not only do we do a little bit of craziness, a little cheesiness, we do get into the hard rock and the hair metal, and that's what it's all about. And Greg, when you think about pretty much the end all of the hair metal, the hard rock movement, what band comes to mind?
We're sticking with the 80s. And gosh, and of course the 80s was just an explosion for that kind of music. Literally.
Yes.
And you had so many tiers of bands. Bands that just became megastars, and then the bands that maybe were under that, and like the perennial opener type bands, and then bands that just never got big that you'll find out there on YouTube that had recorded, and maybe didn't get signed to a major label, but did a lot of, they sure put a lot of effort into their music. But if we're going to look at the maybe quintessential, we're big fans of them. Have to go with Motley Crue on that.
Oh, okay. I was thinking about Wham, but no, I think you're right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Motley
snap out of
Crue
it.
would be the quintessential.
Yeah, and because they, I think they got together like in '81. Too Fast for Love, I think, was pressed out in '82. And they just took off in the '80s like a rocket. And all through the '80s, they just had these albums, songs, tours that just kind of, they provided a lot of the soundtrack for those of us growing up in the '80s, pre-teens, teenagers, 20-somethings, people at that age level. The Motley Crue music was, like I said, provided a lot of the soundtrack for those times.
It sure did. And you know what? When it comes down to, how shall I say this? When it comes down to being ballsy with an album picture, the entire album, I think we kind of nailed it with Too Fast for Love, because the term ballsy might be absolutely something that is pictorially depicted. Because when you've got a picture of your crotch on an album, I think you're stating a little bit of, we're going to sing what we sing. It doesn't matter what you think.
You're putting it all out there. That's right. I think it seems to me like I heard that was Vince that is pictured there. I don't know if that's, I want to say that is, but I don't know if that's the absolute fact there. But yeah, Too Fast for Love. The first time that they came out and kind of got national exposure. And they had kind of I've heard a lot of people say they had kind of a 70s. Of course, it was like '82, so they had like a 70s kind of vibe going on, and some great songs there. Of course, the title track, Too Fast for Love, which love the song, and Vince sounds like he's 13 when he's singing it, and but it's awesome. It's great. Live Wire was a big one, and they performed that in concert. And they shot the video for that, Live Wire. That's the one where Mick Mars does the blood thing, drooling the blood thing, and Nikki Sixx he sets his leg on fire. But yeah, it's visually they had it all. They had the music, kind of the style they brought out, the visuals. You could tell they were going to be destined for bigger things when they came out and they hit it with that album, Too Fast for Love.
Oh yeah, you're exactly right. I remember the tune Public Enemy #1.
Yes.
That was a rocker. And of course, Mick Mars being in his late 40s at the time, or at least he looked like it. He was center stage. That tune started showing a little bit about what young Meister Mick Mars could do. And that band, they pretty much had, again, that shock rock kind of thing that was starting to evolve in LA at that time. Right. They not only took that, because, Van Halen was starting to rule the day in LA. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they took that amazing stage presence and then added all the leather, all the makeup, all the shock rock values. And of course, if you're showcasing your junk right there on an album cover, it's going to be Van Halen 2.0 and then some. Yeah.
Well, and they had when they came out with that, you mentioned the look and everything. We get into this maybe a little bit later, but they it's kind of ironic. They, like their first big tour they went out on, they opened for Ozzy Osbourne. They also, at that time, it was in '83, it's a Shout at the Devil, which we can get into that album. They had that, their look from Too Fast for Love was just blown up and multiplied on Shout at the Devil. But it was kind of ironic because who else they also opened for during that time was a band which was known for being bombastic, blowing up things, wearing makeup. But when they opened for this band, the headliner band had taken the makeup off, and they opened for Kiss on part of the Lick It Up tour. So
okay.
Well, and you can see the Kiss influence there in Motley Crue, as far as, you know, the things they do, the drum risers, like I said, blowing up things, the blood, the flames, and just taking it over the top. You know, bands like you were talking about on like the Sunset Strip at that time, Nat, just a lot of great bands that really laid a foundation. Quiet Riot, Y&T.
Yes.
The band, we're talking about putting on a show and all. The band Wasp, which kind of relates to, we're talking about Too Fast for Love, that album, and Livewire, the video for Livewire where Nikki Sixx sets his leg on fire. It's my understanding that Blackie Lawless of Wasp was close with Nikki Sixx and showed him how to set his leg on fire, set himself on fire. So yeah, just that. It was very early 80s, wild times, a lot of new things coming up, and music took a real kick in the face right there, and maybe a quick kick in the pants, and a lot of wonderful things were launched there at that time. So, you know, in the business world, we would call that mentoring. That was fine mentoring. Yes, by Wasp too. Yeah. Anyways, such great stuff, and of course they had a great song called "Take Me to the Top" on that early album. You know, Motley Crue really set it on fire right then. You know, they looked kind of like these folks that were half from Mel Gibson's The Road Warrior movies and half from, you know, Kurt Russell's Escape from New York. I mean, these guys were looking pretty rough. Their videos kind of, you know, they went in that venue, in that Escape from LA, Escape from New York type of venue. But I'm telling you what, they really hit their stride a couple years later with Shout at the IRS. I mean, Shout at the Devil. I get those two confused so much. The Devil, the IRS. Shout at the Devil. That was the first album I heard. I later heard Too Fast for Love, and I really digged it. You know, it was great. But Shout the Devil, that entire album. This kid from Nome, Alaska, when I saw that cassette in our local grocery store, that had a pretty nice cassette little section there in the electronics section with all the giant 28-pound Walkmans that were there. I'm telling you what, when it came down to Shout at the Devil, that was a game changer, not only for me as a young metalhead, the entire world. It changed the entire, and it caused what was called the LA metal scene with Shout at the Devil album. Right, yeah. Now, sometime, we won't do it now, but sometime we're going to have to talk more about it. I did not know you bought music. You bought the cassettes at the grocery store in Alaska. That's pretty cool. We'll have to talk about that another time. But, yeah, Shout at the Devil, and that was, that really propelled Motley Crue. Of course, you know, in 81, you know, what else was the big thing in music wasn't on the radio so much, and it wasn't on a stereo. It was on TV, MTV coming out. And Shout at the Devil, 2 videos, Looks at Kill, and one of my favorite Motley Crue songs, Too Young to Fall in Love. Those 2 videos were so visually stirring. I mean, you saw just a clip of one of those videos, and it was like, whoa, wow. And you remembered that, and you had to see it again, and they really knew how to market themselves. The songs were great, and when you paired them with that imagery and just kind of the little storylines that they had going on, it really woke a lot of people up and had started people talking about Motley Crue. But yeah, Shout at the Devil, it gained a lot of notoriety. Like I said, they're opening on tour for Ozzy Osbourne. They're on tour opening for Kiss. You know, if you're going to pick a couple of acts in that period of time to open for to get you big, that you probably doing all right with those 2. I'm telling you what, it was so heavy, and so it was just such headbang worthy music. So we had already started seeing all of those elements coming with Van Halen, of course, and then Y&T, like you said, and some White Snake was just starting to come across the pond over to America.
was sliding in about that same time or so. There was a lot of movement. It was not only that new wave of British heavy metal, but they were Americanizing it with the shock rock value of Alice Cooper and the New York Dolls and some of those other crazy over the top, and even a little David Bowie, who was doing kind of that shock rock pop, pop, I guess. And it was just really combining it in such an amazing way.
And we got to mention Twisted Sister.
Oh yes, absolutely.
But the way that the shock rock but I mean MTV, they saw that was the way to go, so it just propelled them.
Because it was so visually stimulating. Not only was the music was amazing, and it really got people just involved, headbanging, but the visual production was over the top. We'd already seen that with Alice Cooper, like I said earlier, and some of those bands. Even Lizzie Borden was another one of those shock rock kind of bands that was starting out about the same time. But I'm telling you what, with Shout at the Devil, it was just, and every single tune on that album is crazy good. And remember the opener, Alistair Fiend.
In the beginning, yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It started out with the most ominous, crazy spoken word kind of introduction to Shout at the Devil. It was mind-blowing at the time.
It truly was. And the song, and of course there was a lot of controversy, and they thrived on controversy. But if you look at the song Shout at the Devil, it doesn't really paint the devil in a very positive light. He's a liar and a thief. He's a liar and a thief, and he'll take so it's something on the surface you look at it and you think, ooh, that looks kind of scary, but if you look at the lyrics and what they're saying, they're pretty well laying it out there. There's nothing. They're not being very. They're not really paying homage to him. They're telling you how it is.
Exactly right. It didn't help with all the pentagrams here and there and everywhere.
It's true. It's just true.
But they were shouting at the devil, not with the devil.
Yes.
I guess. Yes. So that's how it went. But anyways, every single tune on that album, even the kind of semi-melodic ballad, at the very end of the album. Remember that song? It was it was just so different. And there's never been another song quite like that Motley Crue's put out. In Hollywood, what was it called? It was called.
You're thinking of Danger? Are you thinking of Danger?
Danger, yes.
Yeah. And then they did. They did a. I did want to go back and just mention, like on Too Fast for Love. Remember the song "Starry Eyes"?
Yes.
And On With the Show and Merry Go Round and Take Me to. They just had so many good ones on that first one that people, if you haven't listened to it or if it's been a while, go back and listen to it. It's awesome. But now jumping back into Shout at the Devil, that I believe they did their first cover on Shout at the Devil cover song. You remember? You remember?
Yes. Perhaps they would be classified as the fifth Beatles.
Correct. Yeah. And a lot of people have covered this song, but when people listen to it, people who are into rock, I've heard nothing but positive things about their cover. So,
yeah, Helter Skelter is such a great tune. I didn't know it was a cover of the Beatles until way after. I just thought it was one heck of a crazy rockin' tune. Yeah. And then I thought, that's a Beatles tune? So I had to listen to the Beatles. I far prefer Motley Crue. There's no doubt about that at all.
Agreed.
Oh boy. And so Greg, after that, so we had just them pummeling America with this shock rock effect, just a crazy, who is this? I mean, they took America by storm. It was like, I don't know, it was like the first Nintendo. It was just crazy. It just made people pop their brains. They were just going crazy. But then after that came a glam album that was equally as surprising, if not more so, because you thought that Motley Crue would go far more into that heavy, crazy realm, but they suddenly got very glittery on the next album called Theater of Pain.
in 1985, Theater of Pain, and it was supposed to have been called originally Entertainment or Death. But they changed the name somewhere along the line to Theater of Pain. Theater of Pain may be it might be the most polarizing album for Motley Crue fans. Everybody has a different take on it. Mine is when I first heard it, I really liked it. But there were some songs on there, like all albums, cassettes, whatever, that I kind of, those are, I'll skip past those. And then I listened to it a little more, and I kind of thought, I don't really like this. But then I went back and thought, you know what, I do like it. So, it's maybe they're trying to get a little more, and I think a lot of people, maybe a little more commercial. And, not all the time. A lot of times the band doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of say in that aspect of it, because there are people up the food chain who say this is what we're gonna do. It was 1985. Talk about glam and bands that were kind of that influenced my. You saw what Kiss did on the Asylum album, as far as the look.
Yep.
So,
oh yes, you are hitting it dead square on. As for whatever reason, the mid '80s, these metal bands started going glittery with electric blues and absolute chartreuses and frilly things, and my gosh, it was just amazing. Because you're right, that was exactly what I was thinking. Kiss and their Asylum album, '85, and then right after that, Ozzy, the Master of Darkness, became the Master of bedazzled looks.
Yeah, the Master of
the Shot in the Dark album.
The Master of Rhinestones, yeah, or something like that.
That's right.
But but still they had great success. They sounded great. Of course, the two big releases off the album. They had good luck with the cover of the Beatles, so why not cover Brownsville Station? Smoking in the Boys' Room. And that's a funny thing. I was going to tell you that that's because '85 is when it came out. And I remember back then, they're recording, they're covering an old song from Brownsville. Old, well, it was 1975, which that was just 10 years,
Yeah.
But then, that's our frame of mind. We're teenagers. That's an old song there. Well, it's not that old, but Smoking in the Boys' Room, of course, huge hit on MTV. And then, of course, they did the ballad, and this is my favorite, one of my favorite songs, Home Sweet Home.
Oh, yes.
And they had to retire it on the MTV call-in request show just because it was just number one for like months. And so they finally just fired it. But
and if you'll remember, this point in their history was a very turbulent time for Motley Crue. That is when the very, very public, and I mean very public, incident, I'll call it that, with Hanoi Rocks and the drummer, Nicholas Razzle Dingley. He was in the car with, the lead singer Vince Neil on that crash when he passed away. So this was just such a turbulent time. Not only did they have such a different sound to things, but they had so many personal things going on in their lives. I mean, by golly, Vince Neil, he's spending time in the clink for what he had done. And so this was a crazy time with them.
And that was just a very, very tragic incident that happened. Along with that, this is one of my favorite Motley Crue stories. Mick Mars had decided that he wanted to end his life.
Oh,
and he was out at the ocean, and he's wearing my understanding is he's wearing his leather pants and his cowboy boots and maybe a leather jacket, and he's gonna swim. He can't really swim that well, but he's gonna swim out in the ocean and end his life. Well,
wow.
He remembers swimming out in the ocean, and apparently the tide carried him back to shore, but he had passed out, And when he woke up on the beach at night, and he'd been at Vince's house earlier. Well, he thought he had died.
Wow.
And he walked up to Vince's house, and it was the night of the accident. And Mick Mars said he walked up to the house and he saw these people in the house crying. Mick thought, he didn't know about the accident. Mick thought he had died, and he thought he was a ghost. Right up to the time he tried walking through a plate glass window, and then he realized he wasn't a ghost. He was alive. So that was a great story. But that's in the dirt. That is in the dirt, and that is a crazy story. So.
Oh my gosh, that is really, really wild. Matter of fact, we'll have an episode here where we will cover the dirt itself, the movie, as it is worthy of an entire Mullet Metal Mayhem YouTube episode for sure. It is so amazing. Even the act. I mean, I don't know who produced it. Of course, we're going to find out. You might already know, but whoever was in charge of that project, I'm going to give them a pat on the back and just a big old kudos, and I'm going to buy them a drink because they did such a great job with that movie. Right.
It was a great movie.
We'll do that for sure. But we've got the early Motley Crue, of course. Yeah, we got Too Fast for Love, Shout the Devil, and of course Theater of Pain. Amazing. The first 3 albums from Motley Crue. And so they were just starting to not only rule the LA metal scene, but they were starting to rule the world in hair metal, hard rock glory.
And, also on that album, a song I think both of us really like a lot. And a lot of Crue fans do like Louder Than Hell, came off of Theater of Pain.
Oh, yes.
And that was a great one. Tonight We Need a Lover. I like that one a lot.
I play that one frequently on my radio show. I love that song too.
The Theater of Pain tour, that was the first tour we got to see because Tommy Lee gets a little, what's the word? He gets a little creative with his drum solos. Yeah. And that was the first one where the drum riser flipped forward, like where the audience see him from the top view. It would raise up and flip forward. That's kind of like the first time he was, and that's going back to, Kiss. Peter Criss had the drum set that raised, 20, 30 feet in the air when they're playing, and they still do that. But that was their first headlining tour. I think Rat opened for them on some shows, and so that was their first headlining tour, was on Theater of Pain.
And some of those early stories that we heard about on the dirt were just amazing about how they came together. I mean, these are dirt poor kids, in LA, just kind of trying to get things going. And Mick Mars was not a kid at the time. So he's a dirt poor, he's an adult with a bunch of kids, and the dirt really portrays that well. So, Greg, at this point, we have gotten the beginning years, we'll call it the early years of Motley Crue. The first 3 albums, incredible. Other episodes, we're going to have other episodes about the middle years, the influential years of Motley Crue. And then we'll have the later years, we are rockers of a certain age, and they are too, about our age. So we'll talk about the later ages as well. So before we go, we'll go ahead and end this episode with the early years of Motley Crue. And Greg, any final thoughts about Motley Crue in the beginnings? In the beginning, good over. No, not quite that, but anyways, early Motley Crue.
Just an influence on so many people. If you look up bands today, even bands that maybe aren't hard rock, but a lot of them will mention Motley Crue just from just the performance, just what they've done. Look, their fingerprints are on a lot of music, and in all kind of forms and fashions. So they've really put their mark out there, and like I said, influenced so many bands and performers. And they've have a legacy there as far as, the glam, and that's another thing, and we'll get into it, like you said, Nat, as we talk more about them. But a friend of mine, and he's a big Motley Crue fan. He said, you know what I like about them? He said, they're not afraid to do different things. He said, every album, they don't make albums that sound, they do different, and they changed it. They still have the good music, but they don't stay in one set fashion or form. They'll kind of branch out, and a lot of times sometimes it may backfire, but a lot of times it works out well. So that's what I take from them, is that they're just they're creative, the way they put themselves out there, the way they market themselves, and it's all talent. It all goes back to talent.
Yes, absolutely right. So, okay, thank you very much, Greg. We will talk in another episode, the next episode, about the glory years of Motley Crue. They are firmly established as pretty much the rulers of the universe for rock and roll. So, hey, for Mullet Metal Mayhem, I'm the Nat Man, Nat Hall. This is Big Daddy Greg Crane, and we've had a great time tonight. Hey, and as always, keep it metal, kids.